art can mean different things to different people. For me, it's all about the joy of creating. So if you draw, paint, write, dance, sing, craft, play air guitar, or even sculpt using nothing but mashed potatoes, consider yourself an artist and join the conversation. For the next half hour, meet the artist, learn about their inspiration, and enjoy the beauty of creativity. Welcome to Art Talk with John Cole Artist. Well, all right, everyone. I had to go in and unmute because I have yet to figure out how to use this all this time. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. I have an extremely special guest, Ania Kwiecinski. Did I get it?
Yeah.
Yes. Finally, I've been practicing that all afternoon, trying to get that right. And I can't help, Ania, but notice that room you're in looks awfully familiar.
What? It's not like I'm in your house or anything.
Somehow she snuck in, folks, and I don't know how she did that, but that's
Okay.
okay. I'm glad that she's here. And Christine's already online. She says, hello, beautiful souls. So, Ania, I wanted to invite you on because I know that you're a recent graduate of Johnson & Wales.
Correct.
That's in
Providence, Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
And what's your degree in?
Culinary science and product development.
Culinary science and product development. But
I also got my associates in baking and pastry arts.
That is so cool. And you just, I mean, there was a 4-year school, right?
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, folks, I've known Ania for a very long time, and those 4 years went just like that.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. I feel like because also I got stuck in COVID times with school, so it wasn't like a full experience in a sense, but
Right.
I did learn so much in such a short amount of time, it feels like.
Yeah, and I've seen some of your work because I know that you post a lot of things on Instagram primarily.
Yeah.
Because you're not like us old folks that tend to lean towards Facebook.
I only use Facebook to keep up with those that don't have Instagram.
Well, actually, why am I raising my hand? I do have Instagram. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm crazy.
You don't react with my Instagram posts. You react to my Facebook.
Right. It's because I'm one of these old folks. But Ania is an amazing dessert artist. I mean, so do you call yourself like a baker, or how do you categorize yourself?
I'd say a chef.
A chef. Awesome.
Yeah.
But she's really, really good. Not everybody has had the pleasure of having some of her desserts. I have.
You have to force to eat them some days.
Yeah, I voluntarily eat them until I can't eat anymore, and then I'm like, I can't believe I ate all that.
That is true.
But you're really, really talented. So tell me, why culinary school? Why did you want to go this route?
Honestly, your wife had to do with it. Auntie Titi, like when we were younger, she would come over and would bake all the time, and she kind of got me into that process. But even when you guys were in California and Hawaii, like we would share recipes back and forth. And at that point, I was still a teenager, like in high school. That kind of got me to that route, and that was the only thing I had a passion for when I was like, oh, what do I have to do now? I'm graduating high school. So it was kind of important for me to like find that passion. And I originally went to school for just pastry arts, and then I got there and I had a food science class that I had to take, which then got me to that like, okay, I want to do innovation. I want to work within these products and develop these recipes for these larger companies that do sell out to grocery stores, restaurants, like you name it, they sell it there. So kind of having like a hand in that and not just being stuck with like the same recipes every single year. Like I'm working with something new constantly, which was super cool to me.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of transitioned that within like 3 weeks of being at college.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds interesting. So, I mean, so when you talk about that, you're talking about creating things that haven't existed before?
Yes and no. So,
Yeah.
like, you can take, like, kind of what I'm doing right now, like, working so I work at Bake and Joy, which is a company that supplies, like, different restaurants like BJ's, Ralph's, Sprouts, grocery stores like Market Basket, Shaw's, like, that bakery section is, like, not only made in-house, which, like, is kinda cool that, like, you get to kinda dive into that, but you're also making new flavors of something. So, like, people like you don't want just like a blueberry muffin, like you want cranberry and orange, like in the holidays, like something different, like being able to create those recipes like for a customer who's then going to sell your product out, but it's not the same recipes each year, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and that's interesting because when I think about supermarkets specifically, or places like Costco or these other places that have these in-house bakeries, I often wondered, well, first of all, I thought it was always kind of cool that they made a lot of that stuff in-house, right?
Mhm.
Um, but then I never thought about the fact that there are times like you were mentioning, like the holidays and things like that,
Mhm.
there are these specialized recipes,
Yeah.
or maybe people are thinking, hey, this would be really good if we combined A and B, and then
Yeah.
that would be something that you might facilitate
Mhm.
or
Yeah,
yeah.
so it allows for commercialization of products because to make that like, for a grocery store, like, they're making it every single day of the same thing, but you can't necessarily get that much out in time to then accommodate the customer, so being able to buy, like, premixes, like a pre-deposited product or just, like, something that you can thaw, like, that's already pre-baked,
Mhm.
it's important for a customer, especially, like, restaurants, like, it's easier to bring that stuff in, and that's where the, like, science industry comes into it, like, just working in R&D, like, research and development, because we're able to then produce stuff that they wanna buy out and then sell to a different customer. And so, like, most companies will give you, like, "Okay, we're looking for this, go." Like, and then you develop them a product, and then you work alongside them where they're like, "Okay, we like this, but we don't like this, so can you change that in any way?"
Mhm.
Which is, like, cool, but it also causes that, like, you have to have that factor of, like, "Okay, like, I might like this, but someone else does not."
Yeah, it sounds very similar to the graphic design world in a
Mhm.
way because, I've worked with people and they might come in with this idea, this concept of something,
Yeah.
and then they kinda maybe not give you all the grisly details on what they really want, but they say, "Hey, I want A, B, and C," and then, as a graphic designer, and it sounds
Mhm.
like it's very much the same way, um, you might come up with 3 or 4 different varieties or flavors, as it were,
Mhm.
and then go back to them, "Is this what you want?" "Well, not really, I might need this," and it's that negotiation process, it sounds like.
Yeah, you kinda have to, like, work alongside them to get a product that everyone loves. And that also
Right.
is, like, stable for the customer because you don't want someone to buy something and then, like, the next day it's moldy.
Well,
So
right, yeah.
so, like, working with even just stabilization to make sure that it's gonna last a decent amount, obviously, it can't last forever because then I would question what's in it, but at least, like, a week span, like, it's not gonna go moldy, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, again, I one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is because I haven't really talked to anybody that knows about this stuff,
Mhm,
right? I mean, um, a- and the fact of the matter is, I think that recipes, the things
mhm.
that we eat typically, there's such a hard there's what's that?
They're all developed by someone.
Yeah, but what I find so interesting is there's actually a hardcore science in
There
there.
is. So it's like I'm considered a food scientist right now.
Right.
So it's like, I'm not just baking, like, I am a scientist, that type of thing. So there's some sort of science and chemistry because you can't just combine everything or it could explode. Like, just baking in general is a science because if you don't have all your ingredients in the right ratio, it's not gonna turn out the way you want it to.
Right, and I think at some point, and maybe Christine can confirm this, I may have tried things because I don't bake and I don't cook. And you know why? It's just because I just don't enjoy it.
You let her do it, right?
Well, it's not that I let her do it. I think she volunteers to do it because she really loves it. Maybe I don't know, or maybe I'm just dreaming things. I don't know. Um, but I think I've tried things in the past, and I know if you don't follow the recipe, sometimes they don't turn out the way you want them to because
Especially with baking, you can only substitute so much or it's gonna change the texture, the flavor, the
right.
way it rises, the way like, crumb, like, texture could be moist, it could be dry depending on, like, what you take out or add in. So, like,
Mhm.
even just substitutions, like, okay, yeah, you could substitute that, but it's not gonna have the same, like, outcome, but if you change this, then you can get a closer outcome to what you had, what you unsubstituted. So it's like working with, like, different ingredients, like, I've taken classes called food ingredient technology because every ingredient has a role and a function within a product. Once you
Right.
take that away, it definitely changes it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's so cool. That's so interesting. So have you done this since ending school? I mean, is that what do you have that opportunity to do that where you're working now?
So I
You're
just finished my internship at Boston Beer Company where I was doing a lot more sensory analysis, where we're understanding, like, flavor degradation and just, like, aging of products, which is super important within, like, the food science roles, but then also my new role, I'm gonna be able to work with those products and develop those recipes for, like, a customer. So I just started, but kinda, like, getting into that and already starting to work on some of those projects is, like, super, like, eye-opening and really cool.
it is, and and if you think about it, that you're making an impact when
Mhm.
you do that. You know what I mean? Because um, you're affect in a way you're affecting people's lives.
Yeah.
You help to create something of a flavor profile, for example, or some new recipe that
Mhm,
might not have been, and now it is a thing.
mhm.
That's very powerful when you think about it.
Yeah, I think it's super important because not everyone just wants the same old chocolate chip cookie every single day. They kinda want more flavor, and I also see that within, like, food sustainability and cleaner labels is really
Mhm.
important, and that's what a lot of companies are trying to lean towards now because before you would see all these words and you're like, "What does this mean?"
Right.
But a clean label will allow people to read it and actually know what they're eating. So that's also
Yeah.
a super important thing within food innovation right now is creating those clean labels.
Yeah, Christine and I earlier, we were talking about, there was a sale at Dick Blick's, which is that art store, and you can buy
Mhm.
online, and she was trying to read off all the names of the different paints, and some of them are quite complicated, and you're
Mhm.
asking yourself, "What the heck is in this paint?"
Exactly.
But absolutely, I hear what you're saying because I don't know how often I've, picked up a package of Ho-Hos,
Mhm.
right? And you read the back of it, and you're like, "Well, okay, I know this is chocolate, this is probably vanilla flavoring," but
Mhm.
then you start hitting all these other ingredients, which, they're there for a reason.
They're all mainly stabilizers that have those, like, crazy long names.
Right, and it goes into shelf life and things like
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
Which you need for a product to last, but then there's also there's a way to get around using that many stabilizers.
Mhm.
Like, you can have, like, 1 or 2, but you don't need to have, like, all these long chemical names on your, like, packaging. And that's what a lot of companies are trying to lean away from right now.
Right. My good friend Lucinda Bentley says, "Hi, guys and girls." She was on our show. She's been on our show. She's been on my show twice now. She's down in Florida, and she's just an amazing person as well. Hey, Lucinda. Um, so we got the science piece, which
Mhm.
is awesome. So you're a scientist. Do you have a lab coat?
I do actually,
That is so
with
cool.
my name on it.
I wonder if I should get a lab coat, but I don't know if I'm a scientist, but I can pretend.
You can always pretend.
I can always
Mad
pretend.
mad scientist?
A what scientist?
A mad scientist?
I could be. I think I fit that description quite nicely on you.
Yeah.
Maybe. Oh, Christine, good comment. I love the concept of clean labeling because I am highly sensitive to the additives and artificial colors and flavors.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know what? Speaking of colors specifically, um, when we eat food, I mean, is it true that we eat with our eyes first?
Yes, it is very true. Everyone if you look at something and you're like, "That looks good," you're gonna
Mhm.
wanna eat it, but if you have a plate that's just kinda, like, thrown together, then, like, it's not as appetizing.
Okay, so when it comes to, I would be interested to hear your opinion on artificial colors because I know, artificial colors were probably introduced back in what, the 40s
Mm,
and 50s?
way before my time.
Well, way before my time too, by the way. I'm not that old. Um, but they came in, I think, to make foods more attractive, right?
Mhm.
If you're going to eat something that's cherry flavored, for example,
You want it to
mm,
also be red.
yeah, you want it to look like
What
red,
you
but
associate with. I think
but
the thing is colors were to me, colors were, like, for kids. You're like, to get some like, candy is so colorful, it's, like, appealing to people. Even
right,
adults, like, people see that color and they're like, "Oh, like, I that's blue raspberry, that's cherry, that's grape." Like, you know the different colors, but I think it's hard because coloring is not the best for you because it is, like, chemicals per se, but there are ways to color stuff with natural additives.
hmm
Like, turmeric can be used as a yellow coloring because of its but it doesn't give off a flavor. So I've
okay,
done that before. So you can use different spices, vegetable concentrates, like, you can use that to color, it's just not as intense as these artificial colors are. So that's where it's cheaper and easier for companies just to use artificial color, but then also you have to take into the fact that some people won't eat it because it is artificially colored.
right. So there's that trade off there. So from a company
Mhm.
perspective, it's just you know,
Like, cost goes into it a lot, but
right,
I
right,
definitely noticed that, especially, like, yellows and some reds are able to be substituted with that non-artificial color, but sometimes it's hard to get that desired color without artificial coloring. So I've
right.
seen, like, both sides of it,
hmm
but if you are looking for a clean label product, most people will lean more towards that, like, natural type of coloring versus the artificial.
Right. Yeah, I've never really looked at the studies, or the impacts of either artificial coloring or flavoring. I do remember in my lifetime that I think it was red dye number 10 or something like that.
Red
There's
40
one of the which one?
Red 40 is a big one that's used a lot.
Yeah, but there was a different red that they used way back when I was a kid that I think they determined was carcinogenic or something like that, so they
Probably.
stopped it. Yeah. Which is
There is definitely FDA regulations on these colors, which is nice that they've done the testing and they know that it's safe for consumption. It can't kill you, but before FDA regulations came through, like, they could do whatever they wanted,
right.
pretty much. So, they are regulated to an extent of, like, this can't kill you, but it's not I don't think it's the best. Because like, when I see something that's bright blue, I'm like, "Do I really wanna eat that?"
Yeah,
Get
right.
a natural color.
Yeah, if it's that bright blue, it was never in nature to begin with, which
Yeah.
would tell you that it's probably not the best thing to put in your body, right?
Mhm.
So, what about, comments on, like
No sugar.
sugar additives?
There's plus and minuses to them. I don't
Mhm,
think that sugar additives are necessarily bad for you, but also, like, you have to take into account of, like, what their impact is. Like, there are allergies to, like, stevia and what's the other one? Splenda, because they can give
mhm,
people, like, headaches, but then they're also able to use them for people that can't have like, they need 0 sugar, like, actual, like, um, glucose, like, they can't have that, so they substitute it with something else, but it's some people don't like that, so I don't it's, like, give and take when it comes to, like, why you're using it, so it's, like, it's good for people that can't have that sugar, but then also people that want the sugar don't see it as, like, a health benefit.
right,
Because natural sugars definitely like, as much as sugar is not good for you, it's healthier than an artificial, like, plant-based like, because like, stevia comes from a plant.
right,
So it's, like, that kind of thing is you have to, like, balance out, like, why are you using it and, like, what benefits is it giving to one person even though it might not give it to the other person.
right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me,
Mhm.
right. So so let's move from, the science side to the art side.
Okay.
Not that the science side isn't cool, and I could probably talk to you for the rest of the night just on the science side, but,
Mhm.
I snagged some pictures off of Instagram of some of your work, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about it. Maybe you can talk to me
Yeah.
about, your influences, maybe how you did the design.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I
this
think this was one of the first ones that I saw when I opened up your Instagram
yeah,
site.
so this is from when I took a cakes class. So this is actually it's a coconut pound cake with I wanna say it was filled with almond something. You're really picking my brain. This was 2.5 years ago, I think I made this, but it's supposed to be a classic wedding style cake. So that's why it's frosted in white and bordered in white. But then we were able to pick whatever color flowers we want, and purple is my favorite color. So I made purple marzipan flowers for this.
Okay.
So marzipan's like an almond paste that you can use, but it will set if it's left out in like the air condition. So that's how it's holding that shape. But that was definitely a fun cake. I think there is a video of me making that and assembling that cake, which was also super cool because that process takes time. It's like you can't just whip up a cake in 5 minutes.
Not that easy, huh?
No, so I think I have a time lapse that's probably over a minute. So it was probably a good 45 minutes that I actually spent working on this, not including like cake bake time.
Mhm.
So like the cakes, you have to let them cool completely before you can cut them. I believe there's 3 layers in each cake stack. So it's like cake, a filling, cake, another filling, and then more cake. Then you have to wrap those with like a crumb coat, and then you can wrap it with a full frosting because the crumb coat then holds in anything. So you get a cleaner finish on that outside. You can skip the crumb coat, like if it's not super like I guess crummy is probably not like the best explanation, but like leaving behind that trail.
Mhm.
But the crumb coat definitely like, you can put it in the fridge, it makes it more solid and allows you to, like, clean it up better, so you get that, like, smooth side and you're not seeing that, like, final, like, swoop of your, like, bench scraper that I would use to, like, wrap this.
Right, right. Yeah, I didn't know what a crumb
Crumb
coat
coat.
was, I think, until I watched the Food Network a couple years ago. I had no idea. I'd heard the term before, I had no idea what it was.
Mhm.
I'm like, "Who wants to eat crumbs on their cake? I don't want that."
So that's why you use that crumb coat to kinda hide it, and then I believe that's scrolling I did, so you do, like, 2 loops one way and then 1 an opposite, you can kinda see, like, there's that slight, like, change of direction within the swirls.
Right.
And ribboning on the side just kind of to add a little bit more decor, and that's, like, supposed to be, like, your classic wedding cake, even
So
though you
be
don't see any classic wedding cakes nowadays.
I was gonna say because this is so nice, I mean, is that's always an option for you as well, as you could be an independent
Yeah,
wedding cake designer if you
yeah.
so choose, right?
I think that's where I had changed my major in school is, like, as much as I loved to be in the kitchen and loved making these cakes, I found more of a love for science. So I
Uh,
still make cakes on the side, like, I've made them for, like, family parties and everything, but
yeah,
I couldn't see myself doing that full time.
right.
and still loving it as much as I do.
Yeah. No, I think you made a good choice. I think you have the talent for the design work, but I think, the science side is probably more important these days as we continue moving on,
I think there's
towards the
a lot
future.
of opportunities for growth within a science role versus just a standard, like, there's pastry chef growth for sure, like, you can become an executive chef, but I think the science was able to give me more of expansion upon that
Mhm.
instead of just doing cakes. Like, obviously, the design of the cake changes every time, but it will not that it gets old, but you kinda it's a repetition,
Right, right.
where I like a little bit of pizzazz in my day.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. I would too.
Yeah, so
And this one, I think, when we were talking earlier, you said
it's
that's
not
not a cake.
actually a cake, so that's considered an entremet. I know there's a photo with the cross section where when you cut it in half, there's different layers to it.
Mhm.
So there's a cream layer, there's a crunchy layer, there's a cake sponge layer in there, and then, there's like a mousse is usually like so like it's encased in mousse, but then like in that mousse, there's like 3 or 4 layers like stacked in. So it's like kind of nice to see that cross section because you'll see like 4 to 5 different layers. When you
Right.
open it up, you're not just seeing like cake. So it'll be like different colors and different textures, which makes it interesting. And then it's completely glazed over. So like that's why it's super shiny on the outside. And then the board's kind of making it look weird, but on the it's not that short. It's a chocolate like collar kind of around it where we used ring molds where we took acetate paper, made a like flat layer of chocolate, and then molded it around a ring so that it held its shape. And once it dried, because it's tempered chocolate in there, once it dried, you can take that off and then just kind of like place it around that cake to add a decoration portion.
So
Like I,
so th so that gold band is what?
so that's not gold. That's milk chocolate. Actually, I think the picture just now that I'm looking at it, it looks like it's a gold band, but it's actually milk chocolate. But I think the reflection of that gold cake board is what's giving that like effect,
Yeah.
which I actually never realized that when I posted the photo. But that is for sure a milk chocolate ring around that.
Well, I mean, either way, it just shows how well the chocolate was because it's
Yeah, it was
reflecting that so
because it's
strongly. That's
tempered. It's tempered
yeah.
chocolate, so it's shiny and it will have that nice like crack.
Yeah.
And then I believe this was my practical one and my top ring. So we only have so much time when we do a practical because it's like our final, like what'd you learn from this class?
Mhm.
It broke. So you can see how the raspberries are coming out the side. And instead of getting frustrated, I used that to my advantage and had the raspberries kind of come out because inside it's a raspberry filled. I want to say it was a raspberry cremeux, which was it's kind of like creamy gelatin type thing. Like it's not gelatin, but it's not a mousse. So it's like that kind of so I kinda used that to my advantage and just had the raspberries come out. My chef actually really thought it was cool, and she thought I did it intentionally, actually. I did not. I just broke it as I went to take it off the ring. And then on top is just, they're called chocolate cigarettes because you just make a flat layer, and you can just, like if you go quick enough, it will roll on the marble stone,
Wow.
which is cool. And then this is a chocolate box, so not cake at all. So I had a chocolates and confections class where we made chocolate bonbons and different chocolate things, and then this box is just a solid piece of chocolate, and then the top is just the lid, and then the little balls were just spheres that I made and put together and kind of stacked it up because we were able to put all of our different bonbons we made over the this was 9 days we had class over. We
Mhm.
kinda just filled it up, so, like, I took that home, and I'm pretty sure my mom and my dad just devoured what was in it, but you can eat the inside, but then you can also eat the box itself, and if you had the top, like, the little thing coming out is a flower that's on top that we did,
Mhm.
which was super cool.
Nice. And then the last one, this one I think is just
This
when I was talking about eating with your eyes earlier, I mean, I saw this, I'm like, that's just awesome.
So it's a plated dessert. It's supposed to be s'mores flavored, so you have that, meringue coming down that center, which gives you that, like, toasted marshmallow. This was mm, it's a chocolate mousse for sure, that bottom piece that kinda, like, flares out to the side with with the, stuff on top and then with the chocolate coming out of it as well, and then I had a graham cracker soil, I guess you could call it, which
Mhm.
was just kind of flour, graham crackers, sugar, and that I toasted in the oven just to kinda give it a little bit more crunch and not so much, like, dried, graham cracker, and then I also threw in some raspberries to give more of that to give more dimension to it, so it's not just a standard s'mores, but also, like, you got a little bit more sweetness into it as much as, like, the meringue is sweet, but I wanted that, like, tart sweet to go along with it, to give more
Right.
flavor into it, which was nice.
Yeah, I
Also,
mean,
but plated desserts are super awesome because there's so much you can do with them in design aspects. So I
yeah,
did myself.
yeah, and you need an eye for that too, because I think, I mean, I could go out in the kitchen right now and put together a dessert plate, but it ain't gonna look like that.
Yeah, so, like, even anything at a restaurant, like, they enjoy to plate it nicely because if your food looks nice, it tastes better, in my opinion, but when it's all
Right.
slapped together, you're like, "Oh, like, do I really wanna eat that?" Like, not the best looking thing, but, like, something that's ugly can taste good, but usually if your eyes are drawn to it, it's more appetizing. It can taste the same, but it looks better to begin with, and you're more likely to wanna, like, enjoy that.
Mhm. Yeah, it makes it more special too,
Mhm.
especially if somebody, because I mean, clearly that latter one, the one with the s'mores
Mhm.
concept, um, that must've I mean, that took some time and thought behind putting it together.
I guess. I feel like when I came to plated desserts, we were supposed to draw out our plate beforehand.
Mhm.
But that's really hard because you know what you have, but you don't know sort of the limitations you're working with and kind of like the plate shape. Like you can drawing it out, like proportions is really hard in my opinion. So I would come to class with like, okay, I have an idea of what I want to do, but like we had circle, we had rectangle plates, like we had all these different plates, and usually I would just kind of go for it and just kind of see what looked good to me. And I kind of do that with a lot of my baking where I'm like, I have a vision, but it's not always the final product because you're like, oh, like this might look good. This might look a little bit better. Oh, that's not working. Let me try this. And it's kind of a lot of adapting when it comes to that like art side of it.
Mhm.
And the more you do it, the more you kind of get into that routine of like, I can do this, this, or this. Like, how do I want to design it?
Right.
Which is
And
nice.
yeah, I that's it. Yeah, it's which is why this falls so squarely into that art world, because you're right.
Mhm.
I think it's because you have to, I think, not only conceptualize what it is that you wanna do, but like with any art, I mean, I could start a painting right now with this idea of whatever it is I'm painting, but then along the way, something might not work, so you need to make the adjustments. You gotta stay flexible when you do it,
Mhm.
you
No, I
know?
agree. Like, not you might think one thing might work, and then you get into it, and you're like, "Oh, that's really not working out." Like, I've had cakes where I'm trying to wrap them in frosting, and it's just falling off because it's too hot, so then you have to, like, adapt of, like, do I need to chill my is my frosting too soft, or do I just need to throw my cake in the fridge for 10 minutes to let that kind of, like, set,
Mhm.
and then continue with what I'm doing? Or, like, even just, like, those marzipan flowers, like, if you don't get the right thickness, like if it's not thin enough, it's too thick and it won't wrap nicely, and you can't get that like floral edge. It'll just look like very straight up. So that
Right.
edge is very thin so that you can kind of like wrap it around. And that's like a very like hands-on, like kind of like modeling clay, but with food
Mm.
thing.
Right, right.
So like you're using something like that to build an object. And it's not just like drawing, but I think having some sort of artistic ability allows that to come more naturally, in my
Mhm.
opinion.
Yep.
Like, I've taken class with so many different people, and there's really good looking cakes, and there's really not so good looking cakes. And I definitely saw that because one of my friends, she really struggled with the art aspect of cake decorating, but she's really good at baking, like that kind of stuff, where if she had to make a pie, like it looks beautiful, but having to do that like more detailed oriented, she really struggled. So there's different levels of baking. So I think like if you're a really good artist and you can bake, like you can make beautiful things. But it's
Right.
like finding that ability with piping bags or your hands in general, just like how can I make this work? And I do think you need to have that like delicate artistic touch to make stuff look beautiful.
Well, you definitely have that, Anya, that there's no doubt about that. So,
Appreciate that.
um, I can't believe the half an hour already went by. We're at 29 minutes, but I just wanted to, you know, go back really, really quick and just say, I'm very proud of you.
Appreciate that.
And I think that with you leaning more to the science side, I think you really are an inspiration for a lot of young girls, perhaps that really are thinking about,
Mhm.
either going into the arts or sciences, either way. But to have that focus on the science, I think, is a really good thing for
Yeah,
other girls to see. So,
I think it's important because like the food industry has been so male dominated
yeah,
in the past that getting women into it is important because that way it's not like, oh, you're too weak to do this. Because I've definitely had men look at me and be like, can you lift that bag of flour? And I'm like, yes, I can lift a bag of flour
right.
type of thing. But having that empowerment that like women are just as strong as men and just as smart is important.
Oh yeah.
I've definitely noticed that even just the companies I've been worked with, it's mainly male dominated. You see the ratio is not the same. So it's like having that like woman empowerment, getting people like women into this industry is important in my opinion.
So how would you go about doing that? I'm just curious.
Just anyone I talk like, I've talked to a bunch of different people that, like, I've gone to school with and, like, who weren't in the food industry side because Johnson Wales has so many different degrees, and they're like, "Well, why would you do that if there's, like, male do" I was like, "Because I'm just as strong, like, they can't
Right.
top what I'm doing." Like, I think it's just, like, proving yourself and just, like, letting other people see that instead of just seeing the face of something being a male, make it also female, which I feel like that's being seen more and more.
Well, good. And I appreciate that. I know there's people out there that will look at you and say, that's exactly what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be just like Anya. So that's awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go. Everybody, I certainly appreciate you spending the last 30 minutes with us. Anya, you've been a pleasure. Next week, I've got Megan Kidd on. And if you recognize the last name, it's because I think 2 weeks ago I had her husband Tim on. So I'm going to have Megan on next week, folks, and it's going to be another great show. So Anya, again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I will see you in about. Thank you so very much for joining me on the Art Talk podcast, where it's my goal to bring artists together to talk about their craft. If you'd like to join me for a conversation, please reach out via email at johncoleartist@gmail.com or by visiting my website at johnrobertcole.com. So until next time, keep crafting, painting, and inspiring others with your creativity. You make more of an impact than you know.